When we think of space, we naturally think of the stars, solar systems, galaxy, the distant reaches of the universe.
But space has another dimension to explore, not outward, but inward, into all the basic elements of everything there is on our planet.
Here, a miniature world of space exists, a world filled with constant motion, one that went undetected for centuries. It is the world of the atom.
Podcast. Our guest today is Scottie Spencer.
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Scott is the lead editor at Smoloko.com. That's SMOLOKO.com. Meme alchemist, blogger, researcher. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Nice to be here with you. Nice to be here with you. What's up? So, let me just tell you guys this. I'm enjoying these last few days of summer. I'm enjoying them, and I'm been educating others on the New World Order and modern philosophy.
And there it is right there. We're going to talk about the New World Order today. Pretty big thing in online circles, New World Order. I mean, if you're not familiar with it, you can hop on Wikipedia, but I imagine a lot of people are already familiar with the concept of the New World Order. But, we'll talk about Scottie's views on it in a second. But, Scott, that's primarily what you work on over at Smoloko.com, correct?
Yeah, and I know that there are quite a few pages now on the internet, on social media, and everywhere where the New World Order is becoming not a thing of the past. It's not. I mean, what I'm trying to say, it's not an archaic thing to talk about anymore. It's becoming more and more mainstream that the tiny, very few are controlling the very many, and this is just becoming matter of fact. And if you care to do any actual research, you can find out that the majority of the world's central banks own everything.
Tell me a little bit about what the term New World Order means.
New World Order. To sum it up very simplistically, because honestly, there are so many answers you could give to that, which a lot of people would agree on. There's quite a few answers to that. But I'm going to try to give you one that's not said a lot. I believe the New World Order ultimately at its core basis is replacing God and placing Lucifer in the throne, and replacing God with Lucifer. That is the ultimate goal of the New World Order. Now, that might sound like a fairy tale to some, but I ultimately do believe that they are eroding God, morality, and replacing their degenerate values behind everything mainstream. And they're able to do this, and nothing gets financed or nothing gets green-lighted unless the money is appropriated. So either you go along with the New World Order agenda in your new Hollywood film, it doesn't matter how blatant or subtle it is, as long as something's in there, they'll finance it. But it's very rare a movie sneaks through Hollywood now without an Illuminati agenda behind it. And you can see it in so much. And like I said, the ultimate goal of the New World Order is to replace God with Lucifer. Now, how you can look at that, you can look at that in Christian terms. You can look at that in any religion point of view. But ultimately, it's good and evil. And like I said, they're Kabbalists, so they don't believe they believe that if without evil, there wouldn't be any good. That's what they believe. Now, I tend to think you can discipline yourself and be moral and be good, and they don't agree with that. They believe you need the opposite bad to counterbalance with the good. You need both, and they're reveling in their playing of God. They literally think they're gods now because they print our money, Eric.
So you kind of view it in religious terms, like it's like some kind of philosophical struggle between good and evil. Is that how?
I can talk about religion in two ways. I think a lot of religions actually are Saturn worshiping. Yet at the same time, I do believe that religion can offer people, it can offer people guidance directed away from their agenda. Religion can I think it can make you strong. It can make you morally disciplined. There are good things with religion. I mean, look at all the Eastern philosophies, religions. There's great things in Christianity, Buddhism, and Islam that they all intertwine, and there's this basic understanding, the golden rule: do unto others as you would do to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure.
And so there's a lot of great things with religion too. So I hate it when people just bash on religion. Yet at the same time, I do believe in my heart that this may be Saturn worship. There is, I mean, look at the skull caps that the Pope wore. Look at the rabbis; they wore this skull cap. Look at monks in the 12th century; they would shave the middle of their head, and they would just keep like the ring of hair around their bald head. Like, is that Saturn worship? What do you think about that, Eric? Do you think that's Saturn worship, man?
Well, I don't know if it philosophically goes back to, obviously all Western religion goes back in some way to like pagan traditions. I mean, we have pagan traditions all over Christianity,
I'm sorry,
but I don't know if I necessarily think that they're all based in, a pagan or Luciferian context.
What significance does Saturn have astrologically?
Astrologically, let me think.
What's its significance? Because I do know it plays a major card. I've heard other people refer to Saturn.
Yeah.
Maja Daou was brought it up during our interview, and I kind of wanted to get a little deeper into it, but she was getting into the idea of Saturn and what it stands for astrologically and its general energy, and I'm really not clear on that. Oh, that's interesting.
Now, I can actually chime in here. The movie Lord of the Rings. Let's remember, J.R. Tolkien was a member of the Golden Dawn Society. This is basically an Illuminati club, another Illuminati club,
right.
Secret society, where they practice esoteric. It's basically a Masonic type organization, same rituals and customs. They
similar.
Yeah, Golden Dawn and the Lord of the Rings. But here's ultimately what I think like I said, I think they just want to erase morality so they can get young kids, especially, more thinking about they want us to be entrapped in the 5 sense body mind, where all we're thinking about is our next meal, our appetites all day, every day. They want us enslaved to these physical holographic appetites. And we can excel and transcend beyond those wants and needs by detaching ourselves away from desire.
So basically, this is like a form of neo-Gnosticism.
This is a form of perception forming and molding via what we call mainstream culture is just Orwellian doublespeak for propaganda and social engineering. That's what modern culture is: propaganda and social engineering. And if you can transcend beyond this network, just like this radio station, I don't know, I just feel great. I feel great. But let's talk about Rothschild's Israel. They're bombing the fuck out of Palestinians. I'm pissed off, Eric. I'm pissed. So let's talk about this. The Rothschilds created the Israeli Supreme Court. They got a fucking triangle on the roof. This is come on. It doesn't take a genius to put two and two together. You can actually go on Google right now. Hey, everyone that's listening, go on Google right now. Search Rothschild standing next to Israeli Supreme Court architecture building. Just put a few of those words in. They created it. They financed it. Israel is their little instrument to slaughter the hell out of Arabs and keep them backward so they can subjugate all the natural resources and place another one of the Rothschild central banks. Usury. They hate the fact that Islam still forbids interest. They hate that, and they already erased Christianity and how Christianity used to forbid interest. They took that's basically non-existent now. You hardly see any Christian organizations interest-free banking. So what do you think about this, Eric? What should we do with Israel? What would you do if you were the president right now, Eric? What would you tell Israel, brother? What would you do? Put yourself in his shoes.
Well, there was a lot of stuff right there.
Lay it out, baby. We got all night. Lay it out.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll respond to your question, and then secondly, I want to go back and go through a couple of the points you made. Okay.
All right, brother.
If I was president of the United States right now at this juncture with what's going on, in the Middle East, well, first of all, I would attempt, and I assume I would need the backing of both houses of Congress for this, but I would attempt to cut off funding for weaponry to the Israeli army. I would not stop funding the Iron Dome system. That's a system to protect Israeli civilians. I agree that we should back that. Okay. And I think that's a good cause to protect Israeli civilians, because I think that's in the interest of the peace process. But I would not be selling guns, to this organization, this military organization, to the fundamentalist aspects of the Israeli government.
Yeah.
I would try to make overtures to the cooler heads in Israel. The more democratically minded parties,
left wingers, more of
exactly.
The left wingers. Yeah, I hear you.
I would try to make overtures to them. I would attempt to. I would basically attempt to stop, the wholesale slaughter of children and civilians. And certainly I would not permit those things to be done with American weapons if I was the president of the United States.
You're right.
That's unacceptable. To have American fighter jets being piloted by Israeli pilots, dropping American bombs. We're clearly, the United States is clearly partially culpable.
You're right.
Right. So that's to answer your question. But to go back a bit, the Rothschilds, usury, the creation of the state of Israel. What exactly? What role did you see in the Rothschild family?
I'll gladly tell you. My research tells me, throughout all my readings, that Hitler was obviously this. I just found a book at a bookstore. It's called Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, written by Anthony C. Sutton, and it's probably one of the greatest books you can read on World War II. It talks about how U.S. multinational corporations and Wall Street banks, corporations especially, including Standard Oil of New Jersey, DuPont, IBM, Ford, General Motors, and a few others, that traded with the enemy. They made a lot of money on war profiteering, and I'm talking war profiteering. Yeah. Yes, I'm sure you know all this. I'm preaching to the choir. I'm just trying to give the people listening a little bit of information. And the same thing went down with Vietnam. Right before Vietnam really kicked into gear, we took off all trade embargoes with Russia at the time, and we started exporting raw materials that would go to Russia, and in return, Russia would send those to the Viet Cong, North Vietnamese. And these were eventually turned into war materials. So here we have trading with the enemy. So big banks and multinational corporations win out, while human race suffers a cruel hoax performed by central bankers, big business, big pharmaceuticals, big automobiles, big food, big military industrial intelligence complex, you name it. They're all interlocking cartels controlled from the top down It's a Russian China doll format. One egg goes over another egg until you get to the very center, which is the central banks masquerading around as government agencies when they're not. There's no such thing as a federal. It's not federal, and nor does it have any reserve. All money's created by entering digits into a computer. They charge you interest on funds created out of nothingness. And
you're talking about the Federal Reserve Bank, United States, correct? Which is an independent entity.
Yes, and it's basically, hey brother, to sum this up to all the listeners, I'm going to give you probably one of the most unheard explanations, yet so simple. The Federal Reserve is actually a glorified payday loan lender, which charges interest on funds created out of nothingness. That's the best way you can sum it up. And they're parasites, they're vampires, they lend money, it never exists, it never will exist, but the interest will exist, obviously. So this is earned wealth versus unearned wealth. This is the ultimate root sin, evil of all evil, in my opinion. Usury, it's the original sin. And if we can cut that head off, I firmly believe we could enter a golden age of humanity, where we would see so much enlightenment and growth. We would build cathedrals again instead of tearing everything down with war. Just thinking, they had so much interest-free money back in those days, in some of those periods. They created the cathedrals. They shared their money. They were a heart society. Everyone thinks with their brain now. I'm literally starting to think with my heart. Are you thinking with your heart, Eric?
I try to.
Yeah, I think we need to.
And let me tell you where we agree on all this, right? I'm an anti-capitalist. I don't agree with lending at interest, right?
Yes.
Like you said, I think it's vampirism. And I think it disrupts communities, and I think it's a negative thing. And I think our monetary system is largely a negative thing. Now, my question for you though is, I myself have never understood, because I'm coming from a position of that this is all a function of the modern neoliberal capitalist system, right?
Yeah.
So I've never particularly understood the concept of, how does that relate to Zionism, right? Like, how does that relate to, Judaism? I don't understand what the connection between that, like an ethnic religious group, and the global capitalist system. You understand what I'm saying? I don't see how one relates to the other in a tangible sense.
I actually would probably get along with you on how we would run a country to get a lot past a lot of bullshit. To be honest with you, I think we could be because you agree with some socialist. I'm assuming you probably have a lot of socialist ideas, and I actually do too. We pay $4 billion a year in interest, my friend, to the Federal Reserve every day. A $4 billion wealth transfer. This is welfare for the big banks on interest. So just think if that tab didn't exist and we quit paying the $500 billion annually on interest, we literally would. Because the reason people are poor right now is because there's too little pieces of paper money in circulation. That's how simple this is. They're manipulating the volume of money all day, every day, because they're vultures. Now, you have people in there that manage the volume of it, no doubt, and we create it, and we don't have to borrow it with interest, and we supply enough pieces of little paper to facilitate the exchange of goods and services to keep industry and everything running. And I really don't find it that hard. I think they make money so hard to comprehend, where it's literally, I think there's a mainstream money writer, I forget his name, Galbraith. He said money is a mystery. I'm paraphrasing now. Money really isn't a mystery. They purposely don't teach us in grade school about it. I can't remember anything about being taught about personal finance. Do you? Do you guys?
In college, obviously I took economics, so they got into some of this, and they all had a different stance on it. I had a couple professors that were in favor of the government just controlling everything.
Really?
Yeah. They figured they wanted to make it like Norway. They thought if Norway could do it, we could do it. And I can't say I really agree with them. One professor in particular, sort of had a thing against anarchism, and I remember him going off on some sort of tangent on anarchism, saying that, oh, where's the examples? There's no examples of anarchists. They've all failed, blah blah blah. But
there's actually a response to that, but go on.
Right. But yeah, that general stuff. The established viewpoints.
Respond to your professor, though.
Sure, yeah.
The examples of anarchist systems. David Graeber once talked about this in an essay, and he said that the reason that you don't see a lot of anarchist areas, communities, is because whenever one pops up, immediately all of the surrounding neighboring states drop all their animosity toward one another and combine to destroy that area. Right? Look at Catalonia in Spain.
It's true.
Look at the Paris Commune. Immediately everyone drops what they're doing and says, "Well,
give a little history on Catalonia and sort of break it down for the listeners that aren't familiar."
Sure. Spain during the Spanish Civil War. Obviously, there were a lot of factions involved at the time. Franco, who eventually won, fascist leader. There were essentially Republican, democratically minded, liberally minded groups, as well as a communist party heavily funded by the Soviet Union, and there was a large anarchist section based in primarily in Catalonia, the region of Spain. They ended up creating workers' collectives, running their own businesses, running their own shops, taking the means of production, and kind of peaceably ruling the region without any kind of government structure, right? So it was essentially an anarchist community for a period of time before, of course, the anarchists in Spain, typical story, betrayed by the communists, kind of got rolled over by Franco's fascists, as everyone eventually did. This is preceding the Second World War. But yeah, really interesting. Honestly, if you read Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, he paints a really beautiful picture of the place. There's a lot of good information online as well.
Right.
But an interesting project. And again, what happens to these things is they get stomped on immediately. Whenever anybody has, an idea that's outside of the government system and they make it work, the surrounding states get frightened of this and destroy it.
Can I chime here?
Absolutely, Scotty.
I just want to give you my opinion that pretty much sums up how ultimately communism was another Rothschild psyop used to consolidate the world's wealth to further their goals of a one world government. And here's what Henry Makow says: in Moscow there is communism, in New York capitalism it is all the same, as thesis and antithesis. Analyze both now. Moscow is subjective communism, but objectively state capitalism. New York, on the other hand, capitalism subjective, but communist objective, a personal synthesis, truth, the financial, international, capitalist, communist one. And I think he touches me there. I ultimately see them using both capitalism and communism as vehicles to advance their one world order, banker dictatorship. I think both are vehicles.
I agree in the sense that I see both, the Soviet Stalinist communism and American capitalism as being systems that were controlled by the wealthy elite class, right? I agree with that, most certainly. But again, how that relates to... I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't see in my research and my study that a core group of families are kind of running everything, right? I see the people who are elites to begin with, including those families who are traditionally very wealthy, have access to better resources, have a monopoly of resources, have a monopoly of violence through the states, that allow them to control things. But I don't see like a grand conspiracy. You understand what I mean?
The only reason I see a grand conspiracy is because I believe they're doing everything to protect their monopoly on the credit creation, and their monopoly on the credit creation extends further into a political and a monopoly over the political realm and cultural realm. And that's why I believe everything in the cultural mainstream realm is like all the same. I mean, let's face it. You go see a movie in mainstream Hollywood today, I don't think you're going to get anything too original, nothing really with any reality based into it. I think we stopped ceasing to deal with reality, and our sovereignty was pawned off in 1913. And it's gradually been getting worse. It's a boiling frog scenario. And Eric's right. You can't go on and on thinking about the New World Order every day and thinking they have control over everything, because ultimately they don't have control over everything. I mean,
how do you know it's just not human greed, though, in general?
Well, what they want you to think they have the mainstream cultural and political realm under control, but they don't have your consciousness. You, at the end of the day, can say to yourself, I'm going to live and set my own standards and my own achievements and accomplish what I can accomplish. You don't have to be perverse by the culture that they give you. You can excel beyond it. So I think Eric is right. I just think they purposely are retarding. They're retarding human evolution instead of advancing it further, because these people are smart. And I believe that they could be advancing it, but instead they're retarding us. Not us per se, but they are retarding human evolution via their social engineering and propaganda, which leaks in everything. I mean, I'm telling you, Eric, I'm watching mainstream news the other day. They're demonizing Putin for being a dictator. And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You got armored tanks up the ass right now in Ferguson. And why are these black people revolting? It's because the kid had his hands up in the air and they found bullet holes in his palm hands. These people are pissed. So obviously, Eric and me will agree on something I'm about to say right now. We're living in a fascist state because obviously we have government officials and police officers that aren't held accountable to the same laws and regulations that me, you, and Eric are held to.
So well, you're exactly right about that.
Yeah.
You know? And when you look at what's going on in Ferguson, it just goes to show you that, if you're a member of a quote-unquote minority group, they don't value your life as much as they do, that of a well-off, like, white male. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
man. It's... It certainly is a police state. I mean, look at our police are militarized. Look at the stuff they're carrying around.
Program. And hey, Eric, let me just give you a little bit of esoteric information here. The Pentagon has a program called the 1033 program, 33. So here we got Masonic numerology and a Pentagon weapon program where they're giving police units all around the United States massive amounts of weaponry, vehicles, equipment, you name it. Who do you think they're going to use it on, Eric? They're going to use it on us, because there really is no such thing as a war on terror. The CIA and all the intelligence agencies, Western intelligence agencies, Eric, and same with the Israeli Mossad, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar, and Turkey, they're sponsoring rebel groups. And they're calling them moderate on the mainstream Western networks, but they're not moderate, Eric. These guys are crazy. Obama's giving them millions of dollars. The State Department, the CIA, NATO, MI6, MI5, every Western intelligence agency and federal, it's corrupt as hell. They're sponsoring death squads in the Middle East right now that are destabilizing moderate Arab nations that aren't going along with the globalist agenda. So... yeah. And it's sickening and it's satanic. And this is what I mean, Eric, when I say satanic, man, you can even refer to it as Saturnistic. It's just negative. They're harnessing so much negative energy, and that's what they love. And Eric, do you know anything about archons, Eric? And would you consider that? I mean, that's a whole nother show now, obviously. But I mean, a brief opinion on archons from you.
Archon, as in
interdimensional.
Yeah. Oh, all right. I thought you were talking about it in the sense of like the Greek.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But all right. archons as in interdimensional beings, I don't know.
No, yeah. You know what though, man? See, I believe this. Once you realize you don't know nothing, Eric, I believe that's the smartest way you can go. The wisest man is the man who knows he knows nothing.
I agree.
Which means you obviously leave an open consciousness to everything, and you evolve as, we evolve through this experience.
The thing is, the thing I find fascinating is the idea of archons that I know David Icke uses that word now, but archons is a ancient idea,
Gnostics
going
but the
back,
Gnostics,
at least 2,000 years old. 2,000 years old at the time of the New Testament, but who knows how much older even than that.
Eric would know this. What is the name of that ancient Gnostic document they found? The Hagavada? What's that called?
The Nag Hammadi?
Nag Hammadi, yeah.
Yeah, that actually talks about archons, man.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So they could be manipulating our holographic realm via the Saturn moon matrix, sending... they're basically manipulating information, because that's all DNA is. Our DNA are electrical frequencies communicating with each other, and they could communicate with everything. So,
and even the whole skepticism of Israel goes back to the archons. The archons were very skeptical of the Jewish God, Yahweh. Yahweh was an imposter.
There's actually that's like a code. Like a computer code, maybe Yahweh. Oh, I've actually looked
Yahweh, Jehovah.
Wow.
To them,
that's
they believe the God of the Old Testament was a literal devil or demigod that had taken over.
Oh,
there is a Gnostic tradition that holds that God, the the God of the Old Testament, was a false god or a demonic influence. Which is an interesting strain of Gnosticism.
Very interesting.
Especially considering what that God does in the Old Testament. He's not the friendly, all-loving God of the New Testament. He's very vengeful in the Old Testament.
He's right, dude. Deuteronomy, man. You guys ever read Deuteronomy? Holy shit. It's racist.
The Book of Job, man. That's you read the Book of Job. And,
you know
what that poor guy went through.
Hey, Eric, can I ask you something? Revelations. I think it's Revelations. I can't remember. Maybe chapter 1, verse 8. Maybe it says how Jesus says the synagogue of Satan. Jews disguise themselves, but in reality, the synagogue of Satan disguises themselves as Jews. What is your opinion on that? Do you know anything about that, Eric?
Revelation's an odd book. It could be interpreted in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Some of that I see as being the Christian church's later anti-Semitism. Because obviously, the Christian church, as it became established, became pretty anti-Semitic. Blamed the Jews for the death of Christ, for example. Basically using that as kind of a smokescreen for anti-Semitism.
Eric, I'm sorry, brother. I actually do believe it was the Pharisee Jews though that killed Jesus, man. Because Pontius Pilate was like, I don't want to fucking kill this guy.
Well, when you look at it, like my interpretation of
Jesus still just seemed like a renegade to me, man. I want to give the guy a fucking hug.
Well, yeah, and actually that's kind of like what I'm saying is that or Jesus Christ.
Maybe it is Saturn.
He was a rabble rouser, right? He was destabilizing. He was destabilizing the Roman authority in the region. Okay, so you've got this guy going around preaching emancipation, right, for the Hebrew people, essentially preaching the end of the Roman occupation, and he ends up being crucified, which is a Roman method of execution, right, being sentenced by the Roman governor of the region, Now, yeah, he was supposedly in the narrative betrayed by the Pharisees, but the Pharisees were part of the establishment.
Yeah.
right?
No.
You know, they
Yeah,
were
of
they were
course.
like established and supported by the Roman Empire, so they were like, well, this guy's going to upset our program, so they, you know, testify against him. They give him to Pilate. You know, Pilate takes this guy. Well, he's just a rebel to Pilate. Pilate doesn't have any real
Yeah.
concern over any kind of religious overtones, so he just crucifies him. You know, that's what he would do to any rebel. You know, so you know, to me, it seems pretty cut and dried that this was
Hmm.
a political execution, you know, committed by the Roman Empire,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, I think just like today, the Roman Empire at that time, because in my you know, I can't say what I'm saying is factual. This is just my opinion now, and I agree with a lot of what you just said. I maybe am trying to give the perspective of perhaps it's a scenario that Pontius Pilate was pressured and he was concerned about his future political career as well, and where maybe he may end up in his life if he didn't go along with the Jewish lobby of that era. And if you think about it, the same shit is existing right now via organizations, I think, like Rothschild Front organizations. You got APAC, ADL lobbying millions more than any other political lobbyist out there. APAC's number one, baby. And they give Republican, Democrat the same amount of money. And it's not just Rothschild. I mean, you got a ton of families there, in my opinion. You got the Habsburgs, Warburgs, Sinclairs. I mean, you got so many 13 bloodline families, and they're sucking at the public tit. Like, they have their mouth over America and the rest of the planet. It's like think of the globe right now, Eric, and then think of like a mouth, like a big monster mouth, and like it's sucking on the Earth's tit, like its nipple, and all the pus is coming out in the milk. And like it's all of the world's wealth. It's earned wealth versus unearned wealth. And this is what Thievery Corporation sings about in that song called Vampires. In the end of the song, he's like, IMF, IMF.
Yeah, he does
That's
say
a
that.
great song. Yeah.
Yeah. International Monetary Fund.
Oh, yeah.
And I agree with you on 2 points here. That first of all, yeah, there's way too much lobbying going on in Western governments on behalf of conservative elements of the Israeli state, for sure.
You're right, brother.
And there's way too much vampire capitalism going on, and they are extracting resources, and it is harmful to our communities. It is harmful to the earth, you know. Like, I agree with all that, you know.
So
I do.
what would you say? Nationalize credit? Let there be competing alternative currencies that compete with the federal dollar? I think that would be the way to go. Let there be tons of currencies that compete against each other for a healthy competition, and the best one will win out. That's what my economy dream is, where it's just like that's totally free. You're not, you know. What do you think?
I'll say this. I think almost any alternative dynamic economic system would be better than what we have now.
You're right. That's something we'll both go to the bank on.
You know,
Yeah, you're
so
right
to
about
speak.
that. Yeah, so to speak.
But yeah, there's a lot of alternative economic systems out there. You know, obviously the ones I cite all the time are, you know, the work of David Graeber, Charles Eisenstein, Sacred Economics.
Margaret Kennedy, my brother.
Margaret Kennedy's out there,
Oh,
sure.
she's my favorite. Anthony McShell's. You ever hear of Anthony McShell's from realcurrencies.wordpress.com?
I have, yeah.
Yeah,
I've read
you
some
know,
of
I'm
it.
actually friends with him. Hey, Eric, would you be interested in actually doing an interview with him sometime?
Yes.
Then
We'll
let's
talk
get him.
about it
I'll
after
get
the
him on the
yeah.
show. How about we'll get him on soon?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
We'll talk about that after the show. We'll try to set that
that's
up.
for another. Yeah, that's for behind the scenes lingo. So let's
Right,
move
right.
on. Hey, Eric, what's your opinion on the Ukraine? In my opinion, we spent $5 billion. Victoria Nuland, who is Jewish, by the way, went over there, fed the rebels cookies, gave them food and a paycheck. She's related to Kagan, another Illuminati-connected family involved with the CFR, you name it. So what do you think about the Ukraine? I think we propped up a fascist neo-Nazi regime that is killing ethnic Ukrainian-born Russian-speaking Ukrainians. And here we go again, Eric. We got CIA death squads causing destabilization in the Ukraine to provoke Putin and sending soldiers so they can have their World War III. Do you see that happening?
I see the situation as being really tenuous because essentially the people of the Ukraine are caught between NATO and Russia, right? I mean, that's really, you can say what you
You're
want
right.
about pro Russian rebels or
Mm-hmm.
Ukrainian Republic, da 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 da. What this struggle is about, NATO and Russia holding the legacy of the USSR, right? So you have Vladimir Putin, ex KGB, certainly has that legacy of the
Oh,
USSR. Certainly has his own Russian corporate
yeah,
interests
you're
at
right.
heart.
Corporate office.
Um,
Oh, he owns Gazprom.
right. And that's actually what it comes back to with
Yeah.
Russia is the gas
The
pipelines
natural gas, yeah.
and access to the sea.
Yeah.
That's a big thing for them as well.
Well,
But
yeah.
so yeah, you have this situation where essentially NATO and Russia are it's just an extension of the Cold War.
Hmm.
You know.
I want to say this. Don't get me wrong. Putin has experience. He knows what's going on. He's a game player. He knows the world of geopolitical chess. He's been, as you said, he was KGB. But at the same time now, George Bush Sr. now was a president of the United States, and this guy was a CIA director.
Ex-CIA.
Yeah. So here we have where I think essentially they're creating external enemies for domestic populations to be distracted from the few Masonic banking families. They create external enemies like communist Huns, the SVAK, all these Nazis. They create the external enemies like the modern ones, Al Qaeda. Then we have internal enemies, race, religion, class. We have natural enemies like global warming, economic downturns. They have it all covered. And essentially, they literally are, if you look back at the Freemasons' motto, it is out of chaos comes order. So it actually, when you start looking at the world right now, and the ordinary American housewife is probably watching the news and thinking to herself, oh my, there's just so much chaos going on in the world, and it feels overwhelming to them. But it's not so complex as you really think it is, when you understand that the manipulators and orchestrators of world crises are the people that hold the power of our purse strings. And Dennis Healey, who is a former British Secretary of Defense and Chancellor of the Exchequer in England, he said world events do not occur by accident. They are made to happen, whether it is to do with national issues or commerce. Most of them are staged and managed by those who hold the purse string. Now, you'll never see this man in the mainstream media because obviously they have their secret societies infested here, and they control all talking points. Everything you see, I mean, once in a while, though, you will see something decent on Fox News. Can I ask you something, Eric? Did you happen to see that interview, dude, of Sean Hannity interviewing this Palestinian guy? And the Palestinian guy was just trying to talk, and Sean Hannity literally started screaming at the guy and just cut him off. And Russell Brand even, it was so bad, even Russell Brand commented about it.
Yeah, I heard about it. I didn't watch it because I try not to watch Hannity at all. Because that's what he always does.
Doesn't he make you angry though, dude? Like I get so angry. I want to kick the TV just hearing his voice. He's such a
right. I mean, the guy's getting paid millions of dollars to do that.
Yeah,
just to be an asshole on television. You know what I mean?
Right, dude.
It's like guys like Hannity. I just don't. I don't even consider guys like that journalists. You know what I mean? He's an entertainer.
He's an infotainer. He's a prostitute.
Yeah. Right. He's an actor. You know what I mean? He's a clown. Yeah, you know what I mean? He's a silly clown on the television that yells at people.
Yeah, he's prostituting himself.
Yeah, I mean it's just for the money.
It's just
what I mean.
Money.
And Fox News, I mean, you hear things about Fox News, but they say that every morning at Fox News they pass around a memo that gives you all the talking points for the day. Everybody, you know what I mean? Right. So everybody says the same thing. Everybody's got the same program.
I read that. I read that in David Icke's Perception Deception. So you're right about that. I've seen that, and Eric's right. They give out talking points every morning where you have to abide and toe the line for corporate policy, and if you don't, bye. And so does MSNBC though, because hey,
absolutely.
yeah.
Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks says the same thing about MSNBC. He tells this story very frankly. He gets called into a room one day, and they tell him, you've got to play by the rules, man. You've got to, you've got to keep things, with the program. You've got to, stay with the MSNBC guidelines, or else, we're gonna have to bump you to the weekend. We're gonna have to fire you. Da 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 da. And finally he just said, well, screw this. I'm quitting. But that's what the big corporate media does.
Oh, you're right, brother.
You know what I mean? But yeah, you had a quote there. I've got a quote. I've got a quote I'd like to read you. This one's from a book called An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, right? Wealth of Nations. Yeah. Adam Smith, father of capitalism. The quote, people of the same trade seldom meet together, even for merriment and diversion, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public or in some contrivance to raise prices. And what Adam Smith means here is that people, in the trades, people who control trades, they can't, stand in the same room together without conspiring to raise prices and fix prices, right? We use the word conspiracy. This is just people talking together about their common interests, and it ends up not being our common interest, okay? So even Adam Smith realized the capitalist system is inherently rigged, okay?
Can I add something there, Eric?
Sure.
I was reading a book, it's called The Unseen Hand by, it's a classic, Ralph Epperson, who's actually a professor in college. I wish I had him as a teacher.
The Unseen Hand, that phrase is taken from Adam Smith's book.
Oh, wow, I bet you're right. I think Adam Smith's in the index, but I wanted to tell you, he says in here, a conspiracy, from what I'm paraphrasing now, a conspiracy is where you have, I think, a group of one or two persons conspiring in a legal act to achieve a legal outcome. Now, do you think that pretty much sums up a conspiracy, like at its root term?
I think that's a fair definition of conspiracy. I think it's usually associated with something unlawful. Mm-hmm. But I see a conspiracy as being, any two or more people conspiring to do something. So, the three of us, for example, earlier today, talked to each other about doing this podcast. We were conspiring.
You're right. Okay? You're right.
So, conspiracy isn't a dirty word. It's just a word, right?
You're right. Yeah. And they so what else did I want to add in there? So obviously, and hey Eric, what do we have the FBI doing, man, and the police doing all day? They're analyzing conspiracies all day themselves. Wouldn't you agree? That's all.
Well, yeah, absolutely. The FBI is analyzing, or the DEA, for example, are looking at people conspiring to sell illegal narcotics. You know what I mean? The FBI, the NSA. Well, the NSA is probably listening to people conspire about doing podcasts. That seems to be what the NSA is doing nowadays. Well, or the guys at the NSA are sitting there checking on what their girlfriend's doing, just basically abusing all that past.
It's funny you bring up the DEA. That reminds me of a book I have called Defrauding America by Rodney Stitch. He talks about DEA drug smuggling. How the CIA and DEA, they bring in 80% of the world's drugs in the United States.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that the CIA is basically a glorified drug dealing organization.
Oh, they're definitely involved in my opinion.
I don't get into a lot of conspiracy theories personally, myself.
Honestly though, brother.
But that one.
That's a historical fact.
Yeah.
Michael Rupert. Michael Rupert.
I mean, a great book that really lays that down is Terence McKenna's Food of the Gods. And, he gets into how illegal drugs were basically the fuel for these rising empires.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And then you look at Iran-Contra under Reagan, where cocaine was being imported in the United States with the tacit approval of the CIA to fund, you know, the arms dealing.
If it wasn't drugs, it was slavery, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I am deeply skeptical of the CIA action in Afghanistan. I'm deeply, you know, I mean, look, what 80% of the world's heroin or something like that comes from Afghanistan now. You know, as soon as we invade and the CIA is all over the place, you know,
The cruel hoax.
yeah, you know, so, but yeah, certainly these intelligence agencies are out of control. You know, I mean, the NSA, incredible abuses of power. The CIA, incredible abuses of power, outright criminal action,
Yeah, and you're
murder.
right. You're right.
You know, Mossad is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
The Russian intelligence agencies are the same way. You know, I mean, you've got the CIA going around doing rendition, just like kidnapping people off the streets, taking them to Guantanamo Bay. You know, I mean, it's I mean, it's kind of terrifying.
And you know what, Eric? They've been masquerading around and committing criminal activity for over 60 years under the disguise of national security. This isn't national security, it's national tyranny. That's what it should be called, and it's Orwellian doublespeak. They'll call security and protection, but in reality, it's enslavement. The Department of Homeland Security is to enslave us to ensure we never default on their magical interests.
I mean, there's the point at which.
I'm just kidding, brother. See, no, there sound anti-Semitic. But
that's the point.
There are
definitely diverge.
But Eric, there are great Jews out there. But here's the dirty history about World War II they don't want people to know about. Before Hitler came down with the final solution, dude, Hitler was letting Jews leave the country. The problem was the Allied and neutral countries weren't accepting any of them. There was a Jewish refugee ship called the St. Louis that tried docking at Havana, Cuba. The Cuban authorities turned it away, and the Jewish people couldn't believe it because they just paid hundreds of dollars on newly issued passports. They were pissed. They were like, what did we just come here and pay all this money for? And then FDR gets a call and says, will you let these Jews in? Because they were lingering off the coast of Florida for a while, and FDR said, don't let them in. And here we have a case of allied nations that were supposedly for the welfare and security of Jews, when in reality they were conspiring with wealthy Zionist interests, and they needed to psychologically manipulate the Jewish people that lived in their native lands, where they were perfectly happy in Eastern Europe, America, you name it, everywhere under Stalin, Hitler, all those Caucasus area mountain regions. They needed to psychologically manipulate Jews into thinking they needed a homeland because they didn't want to leave Germany, a lot of them. They were happy there. So here we have Wall Street financing Hitler into power. We have Rothschild Wall Street financing Hitler into power. And why? The ultimate goal of Hitler, in my opinion, was to psychologically manipulate Jewish people into thinking they needed a homeland, and Israel right now is masquerading around as a homeland for Jews, when in reality it's an Illuminati tool and vehicle to advance their New World Order tyrannical dictatorship. And that's what I believe Israel is. It's keeping the Middle East backwards. Now, and if I was president right now, Eric, here's what I would do. Because, John F. Kennedy, Eric, was in heated arguments with former Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. I mean, they were really arguing, and we're not taught this in history. And Ben-Gurion got so angry, Eric, that he quit. And Kennedy said, if you don't let us come in there and inspect your nuclear program, we're going to cancel all U.S. foreign aid and military transfer of, all aid, all military and foreign aid, you name it. And they were appalled. They couldn't believe Kennedy was doing this, Eric, because Kennedy's dad made deals with the Jewish mafia and Meyer Lansky and the gang. And they felt double-crossed the Jewish mafia, especially in Congress. They couldn't believe this. They were like, we just fucking won this election for this guy. His dad promised Joey Boy he was going to do everything we wanted. Now he's canceling aid to Israel's nuclear weapons program. This guy's fucking dead. This is in Michael Collins Piper's book about Kennedy and how the Israeli lobby, really Rothschild lobby, assassinated his ass. And this is what Jesse Ventura, the so-called conspiracy theorist who had a show on Rupert Murdoch, who's a well-known Zionist, New World Order hatching, man. Why, if Jesse Ventura was the real deal, why is this guy got a show on Rupert Murdoch's True TV? And he's written 3 books on Kennedy, Ventura. I think at least 2. I think 3 though with another guy. He was in Law and Order, and none of these books mention any connection. Because Clay Shaw, you guys familiar with Clay Shaw? He was on the Warren Commission. No, he was being investigated. Are you familiar with Clay Shaw, Eric? He was.
I know the name.
Yeah, he was connected to a company. Now he was on charge for conspiracy in John F. Kennedy's murder, dude. I'm pretty sure Clay Shaw. Or no, was he on the Warren Commission? Clay Shaw. Man, I sound like an idiot here, but Clay Shaw though was connected to a company called Permidex, and this Permidex company was a Mossad company operating as a random business entity. And the same thing happened on 9/11. We have 5 Israeli Mossad agents dancing in front of the Twin Towers while they're burning down, clapping, and we have people and American police officers arrest them. They look in the van. There's socks of money rolled up with thousands of dollars. There's weapons, everything, you name it. And you know what? The Mossad was operating in New York City under a subsidiary corporate company called Urban Moving Systems. And on the company van, they had a mural, a painting of the Twin Towers blowing up. That's how bold they are. They're satanic. And this is what Satanists do. They tell us they're going to do something before they do it because it's an occult ritual. They do this because it harnesses more energy towards their evil act. It's equivalent, Eric, it would basically be like, Eric, if you called up your neighbor right now, let's say you live next to a married couple, and you called up the guy and you were like, I'm going to come over and rape your wife. It scares him and lays guilt on him. The same is attributed to when they subliminally and subconsciously do it in mass media. Because, Eric, if you remember, dude, in the Colorado Batman shooting, before those people got shot up by that MK Ultra patsy, they saw a movie trailer for Gangster Squad, and in the trailer, right before the people in the movie theater got murdered, there was a trailer for Gangster Squad where a mafioso goes into a movie theater and starts shooting it over the Tommy Boy. And then they start getting shot up by those dudes with the gas mask on.
I've heard that.
Yeah, and hey, get this, Eric. In a 2005 London bus bombing, there was a trolley-looking bus going down a street in London. All of a sudden, it blows up. A bomb goes off. But you know what kind of poster was on the bus? It was a trailer for the movie called The Dissent, which had a poster, and it had like a one eye of a girl, one eye, obviously. You know, their symbolism. And then it says outright terror. So here we have them relaying their message to us before it happens. Do you think there's any relevance to that, Pat?
I don't know if there's actually people
terror
behind it. I think there's.
Do you think it's scary?
It's archetypal though.
Yeah.
I think it's the way the universe sort of operates.
Yeah.
It communicates through archetype, through metaphor. You know, I mean, the same thing with 9/11. You know,
Yeah.
different rappers, you know, using that as their album cover before the fact.
Yeah.
It being in a card game on the Illuminati. You know, I think it is outrageous, but I think it's more.
Yeah. It
I
just
don't
happens.
know. Just the universe, the universe almost making fun of the situation.
You're right. Yeah, I see
it's
that.
weird.
That's a good way of looking at it, actually. The more you realize you have you can't control everything, the more you feel better. The less you have.
I also think that if in our popular culture, you know, and look, I'm not somebody who agrees with any kind of censorship, right? But I think if we put all this violence in our culture, that's what's going to manifest in our culture. You know what I mean? You know, you're inundated with violent images all the time. It makes sense that at some point people are going to start committing acts of violence.
He's right about that. You're right about that, Eric. And can I ask you something, dude? David Icke talks about this in his book I just finished. He talks about how video games especially are desensitizing kids now to it, and especially shows like The Walking Dead. They are desensitizing viewers. And do you see an agenda affiliated with desensitizing people for them to accept perpetual war and to join military-related occupations that involve being drone jockeys?
I mean, I see the potential for it.
You see,
You know,
yeah.
I definitely see the potential for it. You know, a lot of people have said that about, like the Call of Duty games, for example.
Mhm.
You know, that being a drone pilot is essentially like playing Call of Duty.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And yeah, I think we are desensitized to violence.
Mhm.
You know, until it happens in our daily life and we actually see it.
Yeah.
You know, I think we are kind of desensitized to violence. Especially. I mean, there's not even like a big public outcry about seeing police forces
Yeah.
with SWAT vehicles and assault rifles wandering around in the streets.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's, to me, that's crazy. To me, that's
Yeah,
frightening.
hey, you know what,
Right?
Eric?
But to
You're
a
right.
lot of people, it's just, yeah, well, that's just what it is. You know,
Mm.
I don't know. I think we as a culture have been acclimated to violence. You know.
Oh, you're right. And can I say something? When you just brought up the fact that we're being bombarded now with lower belly chakra imagery of scenes stemming from Ferguson now, just like you relayed. Now, here's what I think. I don't think they're showing us these imageries of all this police state going on um, to expose it and to end it. I think they're actually relaying these lower belly chakra images of the police state to actually, like you just said in other circumstances, to desensitize us to it and to get us used to this kind of imagery going on in the actual, in your community. Do you think that?
Well, they're
Because you're right, they're not talking negative of it, Eric. They're like, I'm watching the Ferguson stuff on TV. Like, you have guys on CNN and MSNBC and Fox News, like, they're not even like saying like a lot to expose it. It's more or less like they're kind of agreeing with it. Like, yeah,
there was a police department. This was on John Oliver's
yeah,
HBO show, right? He showed this video of one of the police departments, testing their SWAT vehicle, right? And it was like kind of a faraway shot of this big armored vehicle, and they're just like spinning it around this big yard, and they were playing a death metal or heavy metal song to it, and John Oliver said the title of the song was "Die Motherfucker Die,"
ah,
right? And so these guys are like glorifying this, like, look at our new fucking toy, you know what I mean? And
ah,
playing it to a song called "Die Motherfucker Die." I mean, that's pretty frightening. That these are the
mm,
guys who have that kind of
oh,
weaponry.
you're
You know,
right,
and,
Eric.
and, and, and these are the guys who are writing you speeding tickets.
Yeah, you're
That this
right.
isn't the military. You know, um,
Hey, Eric,
that to me is, yeah.
Yeah, you're
Go ahead.
right. And you know what? Here's what I think. I think the blow that killed Charlie when the police state really entrenched itself inside of America, when it really started getting bad, is when they had their 9/11 false flag excuse that created the perpetual war we're seeing right now take place everywhere in the Middle East and you name it. It created the excuse to militarize all local police units everywhere. It was the blow that killed Charlie. It was the domino effect. Problem, reaction, solution. Create the problem, have the media relay the reaction that they want, and then they offer the solution via the same media networks and the same political institutions they control. It's so easy for them, and we need to expose their false flag terror attacks, in my opinion, because I think if we can understand the fact that Al Qaeda is a CIA creation, the word Al Qaeda literally means the database. It was a list for the original Mujahideen fighters that existed in a computer file on a CIA computer, and that's where Al Qaeda stems from. Yet we're never told this. Um, all ISIS right now, the group called ISIS and all other Islamic terrorist groups are all sponsored, as I said, by Western intelligence agencies and the Illuminati central bankers ultimately. So the war on terror is a fraudulent hoax, and we need to expose this because a lot of these people in our police, Eric, they're idiots. They're duped. They're literally duped. They think there's a war on terror, and they're like, oh, yay, we're going to go spread freedom and democracy by bombing shitless innocent Iraqi kids. And their perception is literally formed by the culture, which consists, as I said, of propaganda and social engineering techniques. And I'm pretty sure you guys have probably come across older white men, especially that are Fox News guys. Like, you see them. Like, don't you know guys like that? Have you guys ever seen that? Or like MSNBC liberals? The left, basically, what you have to understand is the left-right paradigm. And I worked with a guy at a collection agency. He loved Reagan. I tried telling him how Reagan was installed by the October surprise. They purposely withheld those hostages there an extra year, so when Jimmy Carter wasn't pro-Israel enough. And can I, going back to Ferguson, though, I'm getting off the topic here, Eric. I just wanted to bring up something to you, Eric. Did you know that nearly every major police agency in the United States has traveled to Israel for lessons in occupation enforcement?
That I hadn't heard. That I'll have to look up. I mean, that would be the place to go.
And yes, you're right, because obviously you know that Gaza is an open-air concentration camp. They control the calorie intake of those people. They control the raw materials that enter. They can't build literally, they're enslaved. So what better security force than to get training from than Israel, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. With the situation with the Palestinians, it's inhuman. It's abominable, and it's an affront to human decency, honestly.
Hey Eric, I wrote an article, Eric. It was actually about the movie District 9 and the uncanny similarities between District 9 and the Gaza.
Yeah.
Did you see that, dude?
No, I haven't, but I can see the similarity.
Yeah. You know what? That was actually a pretty damn good movie. That was one of the few Hollywood movies I enjoyed. I will give it that.
It wasn't bad.
It wasn't bad, no.
But I'll tell you this. We're coming kind of to a close here. We're coming to the end of our time.
Yeah, Eric.
I know. We'll have to have you on again.
Oh, I love you guys. Eric, hey, wrap it up, brother. Give us some of your knowledge, baby. Spill it out there, baby. What do you want to say before this ends? Get it out there.
Really, what I just in the end, what I want to say is that there's we agree on a lot of the things, the nuts and bolts of how this whole system works. I guess where we disagree, I don't see any kind of I don't see a grand conspiracy myself. Honestly, I see all these injustices as being a function of a system that doesn't work. And honestly, I have come to the conclusion that nobody's in control of this, right? And I think to point fingers at any one group, any group of families, any religion, any people, is to create a boogeyman. Because really it would be so great if there was a conspiracy of one group of people that we could just end, right? But I think the thing is, it's the system that we have created. Nobody's controlling it anymore. There's the people at the top who have influence on it, but even they can't control this global neoliberal market. I feel like it's far scarier that there isn't anybody in control, that there is no conspiracy, that this is essentially a train going off the rails with no conductor.
Oh, you're right, Eric. Can I say something real quick? You're right. And you know what? They actually may like the fact that we make it, like I'm making it sound so bizarre and incredible to comprehend. But I just want to say this. As bizarre, as incredible as this sounds, they finagled a monopoly over government credit, essentially, which allows them to charge interest on funds they create out of nothing. So, I mean, for me to call this the Illuminati, that's ultimately, when I say Illuminati, I just want to get out the fact, you can argue, I mean, you're right, Rothschilds or not, fuck the Rothschilds, we don't have to talk about them. Wouldn't you agree, though, that we do need to nationalize credit creation and take the ability from private corporate power and put it back in the government and alternative currencies? We need alternative currencies.
Absolutely.
I think we need them. We need them right now.
We need a dynamic economic system that doesn't destroy our planet and doesn't cause inequality. That's what we need.
Yeah.
Certainly. And we definitely agree there. Scotty,
hey, God bless you, brother. God bless you.
And you as well. Why don't you tell us real quick about your website and your contact information?
Yeah, let me thank you, Eric, for bringing that up, man. I run smoloko.com. I'm sorry, I really ventured off into a lot of random topics. I tend to do that because I get so excited talking about a lot of this. I apologize for going off into so many sections in different topics. But I run Smoloko. It's just a website. Political news, current events, foreign affairs, financial information. Like I said, domestic policy here in America. Everything educational information that I'm trying to spread to inform people of what is really going on in the world. Because, as I said, what passes for modern culture, in my opinion, is propaganda and social engineering. And I believe with the power of the internet and shows like the ones we're doing now, we can expand awareness and bring down these artificially constructed mental barriers that we have been programmed to put up in our minds. We can bring those down. It just takes a little bit of time and thinking.
Sure.
Takes a little time and thinking, but as I said, for anybody listening to this, I don't want to impose any opinion on you. I just want you to think. If I got you to think tonight, I feel like I did my job. So that's all. That's what a good teacher does, in my opinion. He encourages his student to think for himself and let him. And I want the listener right now to make a judgment on what everything we said tonight. And
Well, Scotty, it's free radical media.
Free
you
radical
know,
media,
we say
baby.
It's a safe place for dangerous ideas. All ideas are welcome, and all of them will be thought of critically. You know, so
God bless
this is
you
a place
guys.
for
It
thinkers.
was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. God bless you, Eric.
It certainly was. Thanks a lot.